Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for our clinic, Healing Response Acupuncture and Functional Neurology, located in Stillwater, Minnesota, where we specialize in neurological conditions, with one of those being concussions and traumatic brain injuries. And in this video today, I wanted to talk a little bit about what some of the mechanisms are whereby acupuncture can actually help people with concussions. Because it's usually not people's initial go-to treatment, right? A lot of people have already been to their neurologist. They've maybe been referred out for physical therapy, for balance training, possibly for visual training through neuro-ophthalmology, and also maybe tried other avenues as well, different supplements, chiropractic, all kinds of things. So by the time people get to our clinic, they've usually tried a lot of things, but they're still symptomatic. And so we spend a lot of time educating people on what's going on with their bodies, why they're experiencing the symptoms they're experiencing, and then also developing very individualized treatment plans for each person, because every single person that has a brain injury has different symptoms and manifests that brain injury in different ways. So everything that we do is very individualized. And I teach a lot of other practitioners about concussion recovery and different strategies for working with patients with concussions. One of the things that makes that job difficult is the fact that everybody is individual and everybody requires an individualized treatment plan. What's really beautiful about Chinese medicine is that everything about Chinese medicine is already tailored to the individual. And so it becomes very easy to make that leap in saying, how does this individual patient differ from the next patient? And then what kind of treatment plan does each person need? So let's talk a little bit about some of the mechanisms that acupuncture has to offer. And the first one I want to talk about is blood flow. And this was my doctorate research thesis, looking at that question of how does acupuncture affect cerebral blood flow? And what I would like to point out is that we have kind of two different aspects of that. We have what we could call just global blood flow to the brain, but then more importantly, and related to concussions and more of the long-term sequela of symptoms from concussions, is what we could call regional blood flow. And there was a very well-designed research study that came out in 2019 that showed that in athletes that had had a concussion, they looked at blood flow specifically to an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. And they took brain scans of the time of injury and then the time that that athlete was cleared to return to their sport. And then they followed up with them a year later. And a year after they returned to playing their sport and having had no other subsequent brain injuries or concussions, what they found is that these athletes had a continuous decline in cerebral blood flow going to that prefrontal cortex a year after they had already been cleared to go back to playing their sport. And so what this is suggesting is that after a concussion, there can be effects that are progressive, meaning that over the course of a year after the injury, or a year after even being asymptomatic to the point where they were cleared to go back to their sport, they had a progressive effect of decreased blood flow to that part of the brain. And the prefrontal cortex is very important because that's where we have what we call our executive functioning. And the executive functioning is what allows us to plan, to organize, to strategize. And that can be as simple as looking in your cupboards and your refrigerator and deciding what you need at the grocery store, maybe writing down a list, and then driving to the store and getting all those items on the list. That might seem very simple, but to people that have had brain injuries, that can become actually very stressful. And because I work with these people, this population, Frequently, I hear these things frequently. People who used to love to cook now find that the process of cooking feels very disorganized, isn't as enjoyable. They actually feel like they get frustrated in terms of some measurements or following instructions. So, simple day to day things that we might not even think about before an injury suddenly become challenging. Um, Other issues very much related to work. People who found that they were able to keep a lot of information organized in their brain, in their head at work, now find that they might be forgetting things often or having a hard time structuring their day or prioritizing information, which then makes them feel more anxious because they feel like they are disorganized. They're concerned about maybe not being able to meet deadlines. They feel like their work performance has declined. And now they might even be anxious about losing their job. And so these are the things, again, that I hear day in and day out from people. And in order to feel like you are organized, in order to be able to create your own agenda and stick to the plan and have no trouble in kind of creating your day. Okay, I need to get up by this time. I need to be out the door by 9 a.m. I need to be at work by 9:30. I've got to then go pick up the kids after work, and then I need to go run to the grocery store and pick up food for dinner, and then I need to come home and cook dinner. All of these things in terms of planning a day can become quite stressful with people with concussions. And again, these are just a couple of examples. The other thing is judgment and being able to, respond appropriately to the situation. So this prefrontal cortex is very important in being able to remain level-headed, and especially in a stressful situation, being able to, see everybody's perspectives and sit with the information and figure out how you want to respond. When the prefrontal cortex is not working very well, not only do people feel disorganized, but they can become very impulsive. They can get irritated very easily. They can become overreactive in different situations. And you can think of it as one of the roles of the prefrontal cortex is to inhibit our limbic system. The limbic system is think of it as kind of like the emotional brain. Emotional part of the brain. So if our prefrontal cortex, if its role is to inhibit the limbic system, and the prefrontal cortex is not getting good blood flow and it's not functioning at optimal capacity, all of a sudden the limbic system gets to run the show. And all of a sudden it's our emotions that are running our lives and sometimes ruining our lives. And that never feels peaceful, calm, relaxing. Typically, when our emotions are running the show, it means that there's a lot of drama that gets created. There's a lot of arguments. There's crying. There's fighting. There's shouting. There's, like I said, just more drama in our lives, which is, none of us need more of that, right? So one of the things that acupuncture can do is actually improve blood flow to specific parts of the brain. So there is research, brain imaging research, that shows that specific acupuncture points can actually increase blood flow to the prefrontal cortex. And that's pretty important because there aren't a whole lot of therapies that can target specific parts of the brain, but acupuncture actually can. And so there are, like I said, very specific points that we use in our clinic when we are finding that somebody is struggling with a lot of these functions related to the prefrontal cortex. There are also specific bedside neurological exams that we can perform to test how well that prefrontal cortex is firing so that we can actually get objective data on how the prefrontal cortex is working before and after our treatments in order to make sure that we're accomplishing our goal of helping somebody to get more blood flow into that area of the brain, to create more activation in that area of the brain. A lot of times there are different, brain exercises that people can do to also create more activity in that part of the brain and in a sense, drive more activation to that part. So this is just some one example of one of the ways that acupuncture can help people after a concussion. And so we'll come out with more videos that talk about other aspects as well. But I wanted to give you just kind of an idea of how we are approaching our patients with concussions. And like I said, more videos will come in the future. We're trying to get as much information out there so that people have a better understanding of what acupuncture actually has to offer. And on top of that, as Chinese medicine practitioners, we also do a lot of work with Chinese herbs. And Chinese herbs can also have a huge impact on things like post-traumatic headaches, on difficulty with sleep, on improving the functioning of the glymphatic system, which is the lymphatic system in the brain, as well as addressing things like nausea. So there's so many tools available to people that often people don't realize are even there. And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we do. And if you have any questions, please email us at info@healingresponseneuro.com, or you can give us a call at 651-323-0005. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please subscribe to our channel where we will be putting out more videos on all kinds of topics related to acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and neurology.